Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast. The Giants fall to the Commanders, 21-18. Commanders don't score a touchdown. The Giants at least had three, but they did not have a kicker today, which is a topic we'll get into because it's definitely the most talked about topic, I think, when it comes to this game. And also just the irony of like a team scores 21 points without a damn touchdown. Of course, Austin Seibert for the Commanders. He played well, I will say, but to score 18 points and not allow a touchdown, I know 18 is not a lot, but to not allow a touchdown and still lose the game is pretty unbelievable. And this is a stat from Walt on X, goes by WBG84. The Giants, for the first time in their 100 seasons, lost a game after they scored 3+ touchdowns and did not allow a single touchdown. They were 60-0 previously in that statistic, regular season or playoffs, until today against the Commanders. So it's just one of those games where it's frustrating because it really got away. Of course, if Neighbors catches that 4th and 1 pass, where I will say it hit him right in the chest, Jones made a good throw, you have to come up with that. It's not Neighbors' fault they lost the game, but you can look at that one singular play and be like, all right, well, that's a reason we lost. But then on top of it, if they had a kicker, they would have won this game as well. So that's the frustrating part. And we knew coming into the game that Graham Gano had this groin injury. According to some of the beat writers, he did not look great in the pregame warmups. And Jamie Gillen, the punter, did not really attempt many field goals in the pregame warmups. So the fact that they sent Gano out there and didn't even warm up the punter, who would be the backup kicker in case Gano got hurt, which of course he did, it's just malpractice. Of course, Gano, he missed the final 9 games of last year, and there's been some injury-prone stuff with him. So it's frustrating. He is older, and I think the Giants knew coming into the year that was a possibility, that he might miss some time once again. But the most frustrating part about the kicking situation, other than the fact that it lost them the game today, is that the Giants had an extra roster spot apparently and chose not to use it. So while you wouldn't just use that extra roster spot to put a backup kicker on the roster, is beyond me. It's inexcusable. Brian Daboll can sit there in the postgame and talk all he wants about, well, it was a groin injury and this was a hamstring, so there's no connection. Like, okay, like that's not the point. The point is you had an open roster spot. You knew coming into the game that this kicker, who's, 36, 37, already has this injury coming into the game. You have the open spot. Just call up a freaking kicker. Call Randy Bullock again. Call Mason Crosby again. Just get someone in here that's capable of making simple field goals. That forced them to go for it when Malik Neighbors dropped that ball. If Gano's healthy, do the Giants even go for it in that situation? I don't think so. So it's things like that it's very frustrating that they're 0-2. Week 1, they would not have beat anybody. But week 2, at least, they showed up. They showed some forms of like being a good team. Not a good team, but like a decent team. They played okay in some areas. I think they were the better team today than the Commanders were, honestly. Like, they didn't score a touchdown, Washington. So I think the Giants kind of deserve to win this game. But once again, like, they did everything in their power just from a roster standpoint to leave that roster spot open to not give themselves an advantage. And it's hard to feel bad for a team like that. It's just stupid. As more time goes on, you lose more faith in Daboll and Shane, and the team is not trending in the right direction. And we'll talk about this at the end of like how bad things can get here, because the first 2 weeks were winnable. When the schedule came out, it's like, all right, they have to at least split the first 2 games. Maybe if things break right, they can go 2-0 and get off to a great start. But now as we sit here, going into week 3, they are 0-2. And they're going to be at Cleveland next week, a team that just won today against Jacksonville. They have a very good defense. It's going to be tough. And after that is Dallas. Like, I just know where this is going. It's not going to go well. The Giants, in my opinion, had to start 1-1 at least. I mean, they're probably done now. That's just it. I don't think they can save this season. I don't think this is salvageable. They had to win this week. I'm looking now. The spread for next week against Cleveland, they're 7-point underdogs. I mean, I just don't see the Giants going into Cleveland and winning that game. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it. It's at Cleveland, home versus Dallas, at Seattle, home versus the Bengals, who honestly should have beat the Chiefs today, home versus Philly, at Pittsburgh, and then you play Washington and the Panthers again. So finally in week 9 and 10, you have some winnable matchups, but the next 6 games are crazy. So there's a real chance that they can go 1-7, 0-8 or something like that, and the season can really get off the rails. But if they had started 1-1 or 2-0, like that really could have changed everything and changed the momentum of this team. But right now, they just feel like they're just a dead team, and I feel like Brian Dable does not have the same juice he had his first year here, and he did slam his headset on the ground, like, okay, but it just doesn't feel the same as it used to. And the crazy part is, this was by far the best game Daniel Jones has played since his ACL. It's like, by far, it's not even close. It's by far. Like, Jones had multiple touchdown passes. He did make some nice plays in the run game. He wasn't perfect as a passer. There were misses. There was the play where he tried to force that ball to Wandale over the middle, and he had Neighbors on a drag who was wide ass open, and somehow he missed that. But aside from that, like, Jones played okay. 16 of 28, 178 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. I mean, it wasn't awful. He had some nice runs, 5 carries for 32 yards. That's good efficiency. So it's like, I don't think Jones was the problem today. Obviously, we could have had a better quarterback. He obviously could have played better, but I didn't look at that game from Jones, and I didn't look at it like last week where I was like, oh my God, this guy's unplayable. This guy is not even like a top 50 quarterback in football. Like, no, this was a competent performance. Jones was okay. Only got sacked once, which was nice. But he also did miss some throws, I have to be honest. But I don't think he was the main issue. Another big issue, I'm definitely going out of order in this game, but I feel like this is kind of just like a ranting type of game. Another big issue was all the third downs allowed. The Giants on defense got the Commanders in so many situations where it was 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13, and like they would either allow them to get it without a penalty or there would be a penalty. There was the Jaden Daniels running play where he got out the pocket, ran for the first down. I think Eckler had a 3rd down and long run where he weaved through the defense and picked up the first down. We'll just go through it now. I feel like I pretty much ranted enough there, but to start the game, there was the opening kickoff where they return it for a touchdown. Holding call, calls it back, but on that play, Graham Gano has the hamstring injury, so he's done for the day. Washington went 3 and out, but there was a holding call on Jason Pinnock, and Pinnock, by the way, played well in this game for the most part, so I don't want to be like too harsh about it, but a holding call on Pinnock that bails them out. McFadden missed that tackle on Jaden Daniels as he was running. Okereke pushed him late out of bounds, but they did not throw a flag, so that was okay. Isaiah Simmons missed a tackle as well on a different play, and Daniels rushed for a first down. That was the play where Dable challenged it, and the ball was short, but then Brian Robinson on the very next play had the first down. Drew Phillips brought down Daniels for a big sack on a 3rd and 13. And then on that 3rd and 13, I brought this up before, but Eckler had that run where he weaved through the Giants defense and picked up the first down on 3rd and 13 once again. Just crazy. Luckily, the rookie tight end Ben Sinnott had the false start, and it made them settle for a field goal, of course, like the Commanders did all day. So they got lucky there for the most part. On the first drive, there was that big Malik Neighbors catch. That was good to see. Neighbors on the day had an insane stat line. Had 18 targets. 18 targets is something you don't see very often. There was a tweet from, I think it was Jacob Gibbs, who covers fantasy football. Malik Neighbors just became the second wide receiver since 2010 under the age of 22 to finish a game with 15 plus targets and 200 plus air yards. The other was Odell Beckham Jr. Odell did this in week 17, 2014. That was that game that really didn't matter for the Giants, but I remember that one play where Odell caught that pass and kind of faked out. I think it was Malcolm Jenkins? I forget who it was now, but he had that long touchdown catch in that game. Long time ago, but Malik Neighbors had a very impressive game today. It just sucks that he dropped that one pass that could have won them the game, but I don't look at this and say like, oh, this is all Neighbors' fault. Like, no, I mean, this is just something that happens to the Giants. You think about the Engram play versus the Eagles. I think that was in 2020 or 2021, one of those, where he drops that ball. Same thing for Darius Slayton versus the Commanders in 2021, where it might have been slightly overthrown. People still talk about that and debate it till this day. But if that's completed, the Giants probably win that game, and then Dexter Lawrence jumps off sides on the Commanders field goal and they lose that game. I remember I was live streaming that game, so if you want to go back and watch my live reaction to that game, it's out there. Things like that tend to happen with this Giants team where they will drop a pass in a very clutch situation and you just know as a fan like that's not going to end well. It's kind of like how the Chiefs game went today, how the Bengals couldn't fully put them away and the Chiefs kept hanging around. And you just knew in the back of your mind, like, yeah, the Bengals blew it. Like, it was still like the Chiefs had to go get into field goal range, but you just knew in the back of your mind, like, I've seen this before. They're going to, the Bengals are going to lose this game. And it kind of felt that way with the Giants. It was like, I've seen this movie before. I've seen where the Giants drop a pass late in a game where if they catch it, it's probably over. But they drop the pass, they keep the opposing team in the game. And then, of course, the Commanders hit that long catch to Noah Brown, who I forgot was on the Commanders, and they get in the field goal range, and that was it. And it's like, it just happened so fast, I feel like. It was just such a typical Giants loss. Anyway, got off topic there. Of course, Singletary had the touchdown, and right before Singletary had that touchdown, Daniel Jones had that good run. He had a nice juke on somebody. The Giants, I saw that graphic on TV. The Giants had, this was their first opening drive touchdown in the last 27 games. That's pretty crazy. It was the longest active streak in the NFL, so the Giants finally break that streak of not scoring a touchdown on their first drive. There was another Eckler catch on a 3rd and 13 over the middle. It was kind of like a screen pass, but he caught it short. Once again, just went through the defense and picked up the first down, just inexcusable stuff. And on that drive, Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence had a big run stop to force a field goal. That made it 9-6 Washington, and of course, right before halftime, there was the Malik Neighbors touchdown where it was great protection. Neighbors was right there open. Jones made the throw. It was easy. But then on the 2-point conversion, they did not get it. It was intercepted. Of course, it doesn't count as an actual interception, but they did not get it. This was a big play that was kind of forgotten about, but in the third quarter on the opening Giants drive, Benjamin St. Juste had that forced fumble on Devin Singletary, and that was pretty big. And that, of course, led to another field goal. Jason Pinnock had that holding call versus Zach Ertz where he caught the ball anyway. And Ertz made that crazy catch where he kind of ripped it away from Pinnock. It was one of those things where it's like, hey, Unc still got it, Like Zach Ertz is probably like 30, is he 33? Like he's up there. So for him to have that type of game, it was pretty impressive. And Ertz has always been a Giants killer anyway, so it's not that much of a shock. So that made the game 12-12. There was that play with Brian Robinson on a 3rd and short. It was like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. And it was just like one of those pile of dust type of runs where it looked like he was going to gain 1 or 2 yards, and somehow he breaks out of it and runs for like 30 more yards. There were so many examples of that today of just guys missing tackles and not wrapping up. It happened with Jaden Daniels so many times. It happened with Brian Robinson a few times as well. And it's just frustrating and things like that just not wrapping up. That could have saved the Giants this game as well. There was the awful Drew Phillips holding call on a 3rd down. Eckler had that big catch down the sideline on that misdirection screen pass. Luckily, they had a 1st and goal turn into a 3rd and 15, and of course, they settled for a field goal. Then it was the Neighbors drop, and then of course, it was the Noah Brown big catch on Cordell Flop, and it was the easy game-winning field goal. So once again, it's just one of those things where you just felt like once Neighbors dropped it, you knew where this game was going to go. And I personally hate when things happen that's negative, that's also so avoidable. And it felt like this was an issue that was avoidable. If they, as I said in the opening, if they just had a backup kicker, this game's a win. It's 100% a win. The Giants defense, they weren't perfect. As I said, they missed a ton of tackles, allowed way too many 3rd and longs to be converted. They were not perfect, but they kept the opponent out of the end zone. If they just had a healthy kicker today, they win this game. Right? They probably have 6 extra points at least. And then for Dable to go into the post game and kind of get like snippy with Jordan Ronan and some of the other guys, it's like some of the reporters. It's like, bro, it's definitely like there's reasons they're asking you about this. It's completely like normal for media and fans to be pissed about this. As I said, they could have they had the extra spot. Like, there's no excuse for it. I don't care if the groin injury is different from the hamstring injury and maybe it's not related, but coming into the game, you knew that this guy was not that healthy. And it was like a last-minute thing, too. I think when I made my preview for this game, Graham Gano was not even on the injury report. So this was a last-second thing that happened on like Saturday or maybe Friday. So when late injuries pop up, that's always more concerning. I'd rather have a guy not feel well on Monday and get better as the week goes on. When an injury pops up on a Friday or Saturday, it's like, oh shit, like, all right, maybe we should call a guy up. And they don't do it. And this was the same thing week 1 with like Gunnar Olszewski was out and they just put Darius Slayton back there. He muffed a punt. Luckily, it didn't cost him anything, but just the roster management and the game day rosters they put out there just makes no sense sometimes. And It might cost them their jobs. I don't know. I'm still in the belief that Dable and Shane make it through this year okay. That, of course, I could change that opinion as the year goes on and maybe things get very ugly. I mentioned that tough schedule upcoming. On the offensive line, it wasn't that bad today. As I mentioned, Jones was sacked one time. The run blocking could have been better at times, but I think it had its good moments as well. Looking at the Giants running from an efficiency standpoint, it was good. You had Singletary go for 95 yards on 16 carries, 5.9 a carry. I mentioned Daniel Jones was 32 yards on 5 carries. Tyrone Tracy had 1 carry for 2 yards. But overall, the Giants ran the ball well. There was more of an emphasis on pushing the ball down the field today. I do want to see Daniel Jones' next-gen stats. I'll pull that up. Looking at Jones' passing chart, it was better this time. There were 4 passes attempted over 20 yards. All of them were incomplete, so that's the downside of it. But at least they took their chances. They took the deep shots. Last week they had 1 pass attempted over 20 yards. It might have been 0, depending on who you ask, because it was right at the 20-yard marker. So if we're talking any passes over 21 yards, they had 0. So at least they took some attempts deep in this game. As I mentioned in the preview, the Commanders arguably have the worst secondary in football. So this was not a tough matchup by any means. But at least they took advantage of it to some degree. They didn't come out here and have an offense that was just impossible to watch. It wasn't that bad, but it could have been better. And Neighbors stepped up big time. It didn't seem like anybody else was that great. The only other receivers were Singletary, who had 1 reception for no yards. You had Wandale, 2 for 18, did have a touchdown. Almost dropped it, but he did score a touchdown. Darius Slayton was 3 for 33 receiving. Defensively, I definitely want to shout some guys out. So on defense, I mentioned Pinnock had some nice plays. I think Kayvon, not from a pass rushing standpoint, like it was okay, but it wasn't like, it didn't have any sacks or anything. But I think Kayvon had a pretty good game out there. I felt like he was winning more reps than not, so I'll give him a nod. He played pretty well. Micah McFadden had 13 total tackles, did have a sack as well, 7 solo tackles. Did miss that 1 tackle that I talked about earlier, but I think for the most part, he played pretty well in this game. Drew Phillips keeps getting a lot of praise from Giants fans. It's now reaching national media. I saw that Ryan Clark gave him a shout out and basically said Drew Phillips is going to be a good player for a long time. I agree with that, but Phillips had 12 tackles, 7 solo, 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss. Like, he was really good in this game. I mentioned that BS holding call on him, and I think there might have been another penalty on him too, but for the most part, he played very well. Okereke had a pretty good game, had a sack, 2 tackles for a loss, 8 total tackles. I mean, I think Azeez Ojulari had a big run stop late in the game, so he came up big there. For the most part, that was pretty much it. Deonte Banks, I think, had a pretty nice game. Did have that 1 nice pass breakup. I feel like McLaurin did not do too much in this game, so that was good to see. McLaurin's stats in this game were 6 catches for 22 yards. I mean, a lot of catches, but not many yards at all. So, and that was the frustrating part. A lot of the Commanders' offense was just so much of screens and just plays behind the line of scrimmage, and it was just annoying because I felt like it was pretty easy to stop, and the Giants were just playing way too far off, and I guess that's just part of this defense, and I have not been too impressed by Shane Bowen so far. Of course, majority of the time plays in zone, and they were, backed up on some of these receivers. They would just swing out a pass. There would be a 2 wide receivers trying to block 1 corner, and it would just be like an easy first down pickup. I think Diami Brown on the first drive had a play like that. So just annoying plays where it's like it was so easy for Jaden Daniels to just throw it out to the flat, and there'd be a blocker out in front. Like, I feel like Daniels was okay today. He looked better than the game last week versus Tampa, but I didn't leave that game saying, man, Jaden Daniels was great. He made a great throw to Noah Brown. That was an awesome throw. Had a nice throw to Zach Ertz, but I feel like Daniels, out of the 23 completions he had here, maybe like 2 or 3 of them were like, whoa, that was a great throw. So I wasn't that impressed. I feel like a lot of it was just the scheme, and it just made his life easier. I think Brian Robinson played great today. He averaged 7.8 per carry. I mentioned that 1 play where I still can't believe it. It was just a pile of guys, and you think the play is over, and he runs out of it somehow. Austin Eckler, I think Eckler's pretty washed, but he had 8 carries for 38 yards, 4.8 yards per carry, had a 13-yard run, which was a first down. And he had that play on the screen pass that picked up a long 3rd down as well. So where do the Giants go from here? I mean, can it get any better? I think You have to win next week, of course, if you are being serious about making the playoffs and giving yourself any chance to have a positive record this year. I think they have to win next week. I mentioned, I know that Deshaun Watson is not the same guy he was. I get it. But that defense they have in Cleveland should not be slept on. They have a very good defense there. I think the Giants offense will struggle against it. You're going to have Denzel Ward on Malik Neighbors. And the thing about Washington, and no offense to Benjamin St-Juste, he did have a forced fumble in this game, but the Commanders don't have the caliber corners that the Browns do. So they can really try to take Malik Neighbors out of the game and say, all right, Daniel Jones, all right, Devin Singletary, all right, Wan'Dale Robinson, all right, Darius Slayton, can you beat us? Can you beat us without Malik Neighbors? So we'll see what happens in that game, but I do fear for Malik Neighbors in that one because I feel like he'll be double-teamed pretty much the entire day. Like even today versus Jacksonville, they held Brian Thomas's final line was good. He had one massive catch for like 66 yards, but for about 3/4 of that game, he had no catches. So Brian Thomas, a rookie that I'm a big fan of, and he's a really good player, but they were giving him nothing for the first like 3/4. Even Christian Kirk, the Jaguars' #1 receiver, well, maybe Thomas is now, but whatever, he's up there. Even he did not have a great game today. So Cleveland is a tough defense, but looking at the schedule after that, you're home versus Dallas. When's the last time the Giants beat the Cowboys at home? I know there was the 2020 game where I think Andy Dalton was starting and McKinney had his first career interception in that game, but I'm going to look at the schedule quickly. Yeah, that was the last time. Wow. So yeah, the last time the Giants beat Dallas was that game. That's pretty crazy. So technically it was 2021, but it was the 2020 season. It was on January 3rd, 2021. The Giants won 23-19. Of course, later that night, the Eagles benched Jalen Hurts, and that caused the whole big thing. The Giants missed out on the playoffs. But the last few times the Giants played the Cowboys, it did not go well. The game at Dallas last year was 49-17. The home opener was 40-0, 28-20 in the second half of 2022. Then there was also a 23-16 loss at New York in 2022. So, yeah, it has not gone well versus Dallas recently. I don't have high hopes for that game or high expectations for that. At Seattle's tough. They had a nice win today against the Patriots. They went to overtime, but they got it done. The Patriots, by the way, are much better than I thought they were. I really was underestimating them big time. I know they lost, but still, they played pretty well in that game. Definitely could have won it. The Bengals after that, that's going to be a tough one if Burrow's healthy, which right now he is. The Eagles, after that, we know how those games go. And then you're at Pittsburgh, which is a primetime game. I think that's a Monday nighter. It's either a Monday or a Sunday night. I forget. I think it might be Monday, actually, because that's 8 days after the Eagles game. So we'll go with Monday night. So it's you have these very tough games. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 very tough games coming up here. I think there's a real chance this team is 1-7 or 0-8. There's a very real chance. And if that happens, how hot is the seat for Dable and Shane? We already see Dable getting kind of pissy with the reporters.
Can you describe your reasoning for only having one kicker active today?
Yeah, because we thought Graham would be okay. He got hurt chasing down a hamstring. He didn't hurt his groin. He hurt his hamstring.
But Brian, are you saying that you can't hurt your hamstring running with favoring your groin?
I'm not a doctor.
Isn't that part of the deal, though? You have to, that it is a risk. You had the same thing last year with him. He came in with an injury. You're taking a risk that it could get re-injured. Why not have it?
Anybody can get injured, Jordan. So,
but no,
again,
he was
chasing. I got you. He was chasing a kickoff return. He pulled his hamstring. I'm not making excuses.
Whose decision was it not to activate another kicker?
Yeah, we thought he was good.
No,
we thought he was good.
Yours or?
Yeah, all the decisions that are made are mine.
And if that continues and it just goes down that path, how long does he have? I don't know. I would feel really bad, and I'm definitely not the first Giants fan saying this. I would feel really bad if Brian Dable was fired this year because he would have never gotten to work with his own quarterback. Most of the appeal of Brian Dable coming here was, oh, he was the guy who helped groom Josh Allen and become the guy he is today in the NFL. When we brought in Brian Daboll here, it's like, well, Brian Daboll, we saw what he did for Josh Allen. He could do that for the next Giants quarterback. And that quarterback ended up being Daniel Jones, where he somehow pulled out a pretty good 2022 out of him. I don't think it was that great, but an average 2022 season for Jones. And now we're sitting here 2 years later where it's like, this guy might not even get his own quarterback. They passed on him this year. They passed on McCarthy, who's hurt anyway. They passed on Penix. I'm happy they passed on Nix. But it's like they had their chance this year. They could have offered more for Drake May. But we're just sitting here where there's a real chance where Brian Daboll's fired and the only quarterback he ever got to work with was Daniel Jones. Imagine telling somebody that before 2022, is that Brian Daboll would come in here and the only quarterback he'd ever work with is Daniel Jones. It's like, it's crazy to think about, but a lot of weird stuff's happened. Like, even this game was weird. The Commanders did not punt the ball once. They did not find the end zone once. It was a very odd game. Like, you play this game out a billion more times, I feel like this does not come up again. Like, this was a very weird game. Maybe not a billion. That might be a bit much, but you play this simulation out 100,000 more times. I don't know if this game comes up like this. I did have it finishing similar to this. I guessed 24-20 Commanders win. It was 21-18 Commanders win, so I was close. But it just did not play out the way I thought it would. I think Jones looked better once again. I'm more encouraged about that. The defense, certain players on defense looked good. I'm still waiting for Brian Burns to make a real impact. He had his run stops, and he did that last week too. But in terms of getting to the quarterback, him and Kayvon got there once, but there was the holding call on that play, so it didn't count. But at least they got there once. But last week versus Minnesota, they played tougher tackles. These tackles for the Commanders are not that great. Like, they really should have been more impactful in this game. I think Kayvon, once again, played pretty well. I think once people go back and look at the film and watch the All-22, there's going to be a lot of good Kayvon film out there that comes out tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday. But just from a getting to the quarterback standpoint, getting sacks, neither him nor Burns were that great at that today. So I have to put that out there. And I've always wondered, and we'll talk about this now because why the hell not? We kind of know where this season's going. I've always wondered if, Shane and Daboll, when they came in, were a package deal. Will they be a package deal when they leave? Is there a world where they do fire Brian Daboll but keep Joe Shane? Is there a world where they for some reason fire Joe Shane and keep Brian Daboll? Which I would be more in favor of, honestly. I like Daboll more than Shane. I have more faith in Daboll than I do Joe Shane. I think this roster is not that great. This roster, there are some Gettleman guys left, but this is a mostly Joe Shane roster. And we are in year 3. They are paying a quarterback a lot of money. You should be expected to be a good football team by now. And they did face some weird circumstances. I know the first year in 2022, they were not supposed to be good that year, and they were. It really messed up everything, right? In hindsight, that was an awful year for the Giants. It wasn't awful, but the timeline was just all messed up, and now we're sitting here today going backwards. I almost wonder, does John Mara look at this as more of a roster issue and maybe blames Joe Shane more than he does Brian Daboll, or does he just get rid of both guys at the same time? Which I think is always the right thing to do. I thought it was so stupid that one year after Joe Judge, when they fired Joe Judge, no, it was Pat Shurmur. When they fired Pat Shurmur after 2019, where I was a person who wanted Shurmur to stay for another year, I thought it was fair. I thought he played well I thought Daniel Jones played well under Shurmur. The fact that they kept Gettleman and let Shurmur go, it was so stupid, and I do not want to see this organization do that ever again. If they're going to fire Brian Daboll, you attach him to Joe Shane, and you send both of them out. That's how I feel. This regime just might not be it. I had very high hopes. I made a video at the end of 2022 where I pretty much said, the Giants finally figured this out. They finally got it right. They got the right guys in place. And now I sit here 2 years later, and I'm like, damn, that video was that was a cold take by me. That was terrible. Yes, there was a lot of reasons to be excited 2 years ago as a Giants fan because we were over-exceeding expectations. The expectations were not high. They were winning games that got off to a 7-2 start, beat the crap out of Minnesota in a playoff game, and we're thinking, man, this team might go places. Now, I never thought Daniel Jones was a Super Bowl level quarterback at any point, but the fact that they were winning games like that and made the playoffs and won a playoff game, it was impressive, right? But now we sit here and it's been just regression and more regression, and it's just getting worse and worse. So I almost wonder, How much time do these guys have left? Do they make it through the season? I think they do. I really do. I don't see a world where either Shane or Dable are fired mid-season. I'd be very shocked by it. I've been wrong before. I've said things like that before. I specifically remember saying that one year that the Nets traded James Harden. I said I would be astonished if the Nets traded James Harden mid-season. They did it, right? So I've been wrong about shit like that before. But in this case, I would be really shocked if they fired at least one of these guys during the season. I think Dable is not a moron like Joe Judge was. Judge was getting really pissy with reporters. He still made it through the season, but things have to get really bad to get fired mid-season. I think Ben McAdoo that one year really lost the locker room. I don't see Dable losing the locker room. I don't see it getting to that point. So I think both guys make it through this year. Once the new year comes around in 2025, I think both guys will still be here. Now, when the season officially ends in January of 2025, will they still be here after that? That I don't know. If this season gets bad and they win 4 games, 3 games, 5 games, and they suck, can you really keep them around anymore? I don't know. I mean, I'm not too excited about this roster. I don't think it's great. There are players I like individually. I do like what I see from Drew Phillips, a young player. I love Andrew Thomas. I love Dexter Lawrence. I love Malik Neighbors. There's players I love here. Okereke was a great signing. Even Deontay Banks, I like him as well. But overall, this roster is just not it. There's still holes on this roster, and Joe Shane is responsible for that. I don't think it's that much of a coaching issue. The good news for Daniel Jones is he bought himself another week, so we'll see him play at Cleveland. As I said, I think that has the potential to go horribly. I think that could be a game where Jones looks more like he did week 1. It would not shock me. I kind of want to sit here and predict the rest of the schedule and just go through it, wins and losses. I think that'd be fun. So let's just do it. At Cleveland, I say loss. Home versus the Cowboys, I say loss. That's a Thursday night game. I say it's a loss. Unless Dak gets hurt or something next week, I just don't see them winning that game. At Seattle, probably a loss. I hesitated because I remember 2020 when they had no business winning in Seattle, and they did, but that was a different team. Different coach, different regime, but still. Shout out Wayne Gallman. Home versus Cincy, probably a loss, honestly. Home versus Philly, loss. At the Steelers, I think they can win that game. I really think they can. So I might say win for that game. Screw it. I'll say they win that game. So I say they win at the Steelers. They host the Commanders in week 9. I think they can win that game. I think they split the Washington and the Panthers games. So we'll give them another win somewhere in there. Home versus Tampa. Tampa looks great right now. They just beat the Lions today too. They look great. I think they lose versus Tampa. At Dallas. I mean, come on. They're going to lose that game probably. Then you have home versus the Saints. The Saints might be the most, that's a team I got very wrong. I was very wrong about them and the Patriots because they're a lot better than I thought they would be. And picking up Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, might be the biggest offensive acquisition for any team. The Saints offense looks amazing right now. Derek Carr looks amazing. Rashid Shaheed looks great. Alvin Kamara looks like he's 23 again. It's great. So I say they lose that game. Home versus Baltimore. Baltimore's 0-2. They lost the game to the Raiders today. That was just... yikes, I don't know how they did that. But Baltimore will probably beat the Giants, assuming Lamar's healthy. At Atlanta, I think they can win one of those. I think they split one of these next 2 games. They're at Atlanta and home versus the Colts. The Colts lost to Malik Willis today. That was awful. My boy Richardson looked like crap. I say they split one of those games, and then they're at Philly the final week. Depends if they sit their guys or not. Let's just say they're playing their guys because that just seems to be more fair. So I have them at 3 wins the rest of the year. 3-14 on the year is what I have the Giants at right now. Coming into this year, I had them at 6-11. I felt decent about it, but this team's worse than I thought. They had to win one of these first 2 games, and they didn't do it. So once again, I think they win at Pittsburgh. I think they win one of the games versus the Commanders and the Panthers in weeks 9 and 10. And I think they win one of the games at Atlanta or home versus the Colts in week 17. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, leave in the comments. I'm curious. How many wins do you guys think the Giants will have this year? I think it's 3 or 4. I really do. So if it's that bad, they might get the first overall pick. I don't know if the quarterback class will be great by the time we get to April. I don't know. There are some interesting prospects, but we'll see how it plays out. That's pretty much all I got. The next month and a half will be very interesting here, and we'll see how ugly this gets. If they can pull off a win at Cleveland next week, that's great. Maybe Deshaun Watson just looks awful again. But I do think even if Watson looks awful, they'll put in Jameis Winston, and he's Jameis Winston. He has his moments, so maybe he's better. But I don't know. I just don't feel great about the Giants offense at all next week. So we'll see how that goes. And today was disappointing. It was just the most typical Giants loss. Terrible roster management. Got to be mad at Dable. Got to be mad at Shane. Oh, here's another stat that my friend sent me. So the one I read off earlier was just the Giants. The one that I read from Walt earlier. This one from Jeff Kerr with CBS said the Giants became the first team in NFL history to score 3+ touchdowns, allow no touchdowns, and lose in regulation. Wow. So yeah, as I said, like you could play this game out 100,000 times. It would not play out like this ever again. Like this game was just stupid on a lot of levels. And they should have won the game. And now we sit here in another lost season. I saw Bobby Skinner of Talking Giants tweet out that the Giants have started 0-2 in 10 of the last 12 seasons. It's like, how are you that bad? We sit after week 2 going into week 3 so many times as Giants fans realizing like, shit, the year's over. It felt like a couple days ago the season just started. And it's like, it's already over. It's like, this happens too much. So, yeah, look, don't waste too much time on this team this year. I mean, I watch every game regardless. It's just, I don't know. It's just kind of those things that's what I do. I don't know. I sit down, put the Giants on my laptop most of the time. I watch Red Zone for 7-8 hours, and that's what I do every Sunday. So luckily I found the girlfriend that also likes football. That's a big must for me. I didn't mention this, but time of possession was pretty crazy in this game at one point. I remember they showed a graphic, and it was like the Commanders had the ball for like 24 minutes, and the Giants had it for like 4. I do want to see what the final numbers were for that. Wow, yeah, so 37 minutes the Commanders had the ball. The Giants had it for 22 minutes. The Commanders ran 18 more offensive plays. They also had a lot more offensive yards. So yeah, it was just a very weird game. I don't know. We'll never see this one again. This is a once-in-a-lifetime type of game. The Giants were 0 for 4 on 2-point conversions. There was the one that Slayton dropped. That was a pretty big one. There was the interception one. So to be 0 for 4 on 2-point conversions, like the math is not mathing there. You have to get at least one of those. I mean, that's bad. They missed one PAT with Jamie Gillen. Both teams ran the ball very well. Now, the Commanders had 35 carries as compared to the Giants, who had 22, but that once again goes into time of possession, so that definitely influences that. On third down, the Commanders were 7 for 14. The Giants were 4 for 8. Same percentage, but it just felt like, once again, the ones the Commanders had were very, like, they were third and longs. They were 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s, 3rd and 13s. And it just kept happening. So it was frustrating. And, just not the best showing from the Giants. And we'll see how bad this gets. We'll see if Dable and Shane are fired at the end of the year, because it seems like that's where this is trending. It's sad, but as the games go on, and I'm sure by the time I'm talking to you guys in November and December and January, I might be fully out on these guys. As of right now, I still have some hope that Dable and Shane are the right guys. But with every loss and every stupid decision like the Graham Gano thing today, it's like I lose more faith in them. So anyway, if you made it to the end, I appreciate it. Leave a like, subscribe, all that. Sorry for ranting, but as I said, this is always therapy for me and probably for some of you guys as well. So yeah, it's always nice. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time.